The march through the night was long but disciplined. By the time the first light of dawn stretched across the horizon, the great city of Tenochtitlan had come fully into view. It rose from the waters of the lake like something pulled from myth, its temples and towers piercing the morning mist, its causeways stretching outward like veins feeding the heart of an empire. Even the most battle-hardened warriors felt a quiet reverence at its sight. For the captives trailing behind in bound lines, however, the city was something else entirely. It was the end of one life and the beginning of another. Tizoc stood at the head of his column as they approached the southern gate. The guards stationed there straightened immediately upon recognizing him, stepping aside without question. His reputation had long preceded him. Victories, such as the one he had just secured, only reinforced it. "Open the gates," one of the guards called. The heavy wooden barriers creaked as they parted, allowing the army to pass into the city. The sounds of morning life were already beginning. Merchants prepared their stalls, laborers moved goods along narrow streets, priests made their way toward the temples for early rituals. And now, cutting through all of it, came Tizoc's returning force, victorious, bloodied, and laden with the spoils of war. The captives drew immediate attention. Some citizens watched with indifference, others with interest. A few looked away entirely. Tizoc did not slow. Once inside the city proper, he raised his hand, signaling for the column to halt. The movement rippled backward until the entire force stood still. He turned to his officers. "The captives," he said, his voice firm. "Take them to the market." There was no need to elaborate. The great marketplace would handle the rest. "They are to be prepared for sale immediately," Tizoc continued. "Ensure they are accounted for. None are to be lost." "Yes, General," one of the officers replied. Tizoc then shifted his attention to a smaller group, his most trusted warriors. "You," he said, pointing to them, "select the finest goods from what we have taken. Gold, jewelry, crafted items, only the best." The men nodded. "And 10 women," he added, "the most beautiful among the captives. They are to be brought to the palace." The implication was clear. Such offerings were not merely gifts, they were tribute. "To be presented to Montezuma II," Tizoc finished. The selected warriors moved quickly to carry out his orders. Within minutes, the army began to divide. The larger portion escorted the captives toward the bustling market district, while the elite group gathered the finest spoils for the emperor. Tizoc watched as his commands unfolded with precision. There was no chaos, no confusion, only order. Once he was satisfied, he turned back to the remaining soldiers. "You have done your duty," he said. "You have fought well. You have honored the empire." The men stood tall, awaiting what came next. "You are dismissed," Tizoc continued. "For several days you will rest, recover, tend to your wounds, spend your reward as you see fit." A subtle shift passed through the ranks. Relief, anticipation. "But remember who you are," he added. "Warriors of this empire. When you are called again, you will be ready." "Yes, General," the men responded in unison. With that, the formation broke. Soldiers dispersed into the city, some heading toward their homes, others already seeking food, drink, or companionship. The rigid structure of the march dissolved into the scattered movement of men reclaiming their lives, however briefly. Tizoc remained where he stood for a moment longer. Then, without another word, he turned toward the palace. The palace of Montezuma II stood at the heart of the city, an architectural testament to power and divine authority. Its walls were adorned with intricate carvings, its courtyards alive with attendants, guards, and nobles moving with quiet purpose. As Tizoc approached, he was met by palace guards who immediately recognized him and granted passage. Inside, the air was cooler, calmer, removed from the noise of the city outside. He was led through a series of corridors until he entered the council chamber. There, seated upon an elevated platform, was Montezuma. He was surrounded by members of his council, advisors, nobles, and priests, including a leading shaman whose presence carried a weight of its own. Tizoc stepped forward and bowed. "My emperor," he said. Montezuma regarded him silently for a moment before gesturing for him to rise. "You have returned," Montezuma said. "I have," Tizoc replied. "And?" Tizoc did not hesitate. "The campaign was a success," he said. "The Tlaxcalan village has been destroyed, all resistance eliminated." He spoke with clarity and precision, recounting the events of the battle. "Our losses were minimal," he continued. 7 men killed, 12 wounded, none critically. Murmurs of approval moved faintly through the council. "We have secured significant material wealth," Tizoc added, "and more than 400 captives now being prepared for market." Montezuma listened intently, his expression unreadable. "The region will feel this," Tizoc concluded. "It will weaken their ability to resist us further." Silence followed. Then Montezuma spoke. "You have served well," he said. His voice carried authority, but also something deeper, acknowledgement. "You have brought wealth to this empire," he continued. "You have struck fear into those who oppose us." He leaned forward slightly. "There is no other captain like you among my warriors." The council remained silent, but their attention sharpened. "You have honored this empire once again." Tizoc bowed his head. "I serve at your command," he said. Montezuma gave a slight nod, then turned his attention to the shaman standing nearby. "The men who fell in yesterday's battle," Montezuma said, "they will be honored." The shaman inclined his head. "This evening," Montezuma continued, "a ceremony will be held, a proper mourning, a proper tribute." His gaze shifted briefly back to Tizoc. "Your son, Kakamatsin," he said, "and all those who died in the ambush months ago, they will be included." Tizoc did not speak, but there was a subtle tightening in his posture. "It will be done," the shaman said. Montezuma then looked out across the chamber. "You are dismissed," he said to his council. One by one the members rose, bowed, and exited the room. The shaman was among the last to leave, his eyes lingering for just a moment longer than the others before disappearing into the corridor. Soon, only Tizoc and Montezuma remained. The chamber felt different now, quieter, more intimate. Montezuma gestured to a seat near him. "Come," he said. "Sit." Tizoc obeyed, though such proximity to the emperor was not something he took lightly. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Montezuma broke the silence. "Tell me," he said, his tone shifting slightly. "While you were beyond the city, did you notice anything unusual?" Tizoc frowned slightly. "Unusual?" he repeated. Montezuma's gaze sharpened. "Anything out of the ordinary," he clarified. "Things not of this land." Tizoc considered the question. "No, my emperor," he said. "Nothing beyond the expected." Montezuma studied him carefully. "No men unlike our own?" he pressed. "Tall? Different?" Tizoc shook his head. "No. No creatures," Montezuma continued, "that walk on 4 legs, yet carry men upon their backs." Tizoc's confusion deepened. "No, my emperor." Montezuma leaned forward slightly. "No armor," he said, "that shines like the light of Tonatiuh himself." "No. No weapons," Montezuma added, his voice lowering, "that roar like thunder, that can tear through trees, that can rip a man apart as though he were nothing." Tizoc stared at him now. "No, my prince," he said carefully, "I have seen no such things." He hesitated for a moment before continuing, "With all respect, why do you ask me this?" The room fell silent. Montezuma leaned back slightly, his expression shifting, not to fear, but to something close to unease. "What I am about to tell you," he said slowly, "does not leave this room." Tizoc straightened. "On my life," he said, "you have my silence." Montezuma held his gaze for a moment, then nodded. "There are reports," he began, "from the Eastern Sea." Tizoc said nothing. "Reports of men," Montezuma continued, "unlike any we have seen before. Large, powerful, armed with weapons beyond our understanding." Tizoc's expression hardened slightly. "They have arrived," Montezuma said, "in vessels that float upon the water. Great structures, larger than any canoe, larger than anything we have built." Tizoc absorbed the words in silence. "I have heard these reports from multiple sources," Montezuma added. "Messengers, traders, scouts." He paused. "I do not yet know what to make of them." Tizoc finally spoke. "And you believe they may come here?" Montezuma did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked past Tizoc, as though seeing something far beyond the walls of the palace. "For many years," he said, "I have waited." Tizoc listened. "For the return of Quetzalcoatl." The name carried weight, divine, ancient. "If these stories are true," Montezuma continued, "then I must ask myself what they mean." He turned his gaze back to Tizoc. "What they mean for me." There was a pause. "For this empire." Tizoc remained still. Montezuma's voice lowered further. "If these are not men, but something more." He did not finish the thought. Instead, he exhaled slowly and straightened. "You will not speak of this," he said. "I will not," Tizoc replied. Montezuma nodded. "Good." The moment lingered briefly before the Emperor's demeanor shifted back to one of control. "You have done your duty," he said. "Now you will rest." Tizoc inclined his head. "Remain close," Montezuma added. "I may have need of you again soon." "I will be ready," Tizoc said. Montezuma gave a final nod. "You are dismissed." Tizoc rose, bowed once more, and turned to leave. As he stepped out of the chamber and into the corridor beyond, the weight of the conversation settled over him. The battle, the victory, the spoils, all of it now seemed distant. Something else had taken its place, something unknown. And as he made his way out of the palace and back into the living, breathing heart of Tenochtitlan, one thought remained with him. The world he knew might soon be changing.